Hello F11 members, and welcome to the latest of my post-production tutorials. I'd like to take you through again some of the fundamentals of raw processing, and in previous editions we've gone through the whole business of how to get the best out of a picture. Of course, every picture is different, and so I'm going to unashamedly go back over it all several times over the next few editions, looking at different pictures and what I've done to them. But we've come to the stage now where we need to consider what I'm going to do with my pictures, having done all the adjustments to them I need to at the raw production stage. We've come to the point where I'm going to export the image. So first of all, I'm going to take this picture here of a fisherman on Inle Lake in Burma, and just to recap, we go through the menus of what I've done to that picture. I've kept the color balance as shot, color temperature here of 50-50, near enough daylight on daylight white balance. As you can see, I've adjusted for the highlights a little bit, brought in the whites back a bit, just to retain some of the detail here on the fisherman's white shirt. Not that white actually, it looks pretty grubby, but obviously quite harsh, bright, late afternoon sun there. You can see, although he's got a hat on, that the water is serving to reflect light onto his face under the brim of his hat. And I liked the composition of the picture with that strong diagonal of the oar here, his position, his relatively relaxed look on his face, and of course the reflections and the strong shape of his net and the boat with the mountains beyond. In the lake in Burma in a nutshell, really. I've added just a touch of vibrance there, +10. I've brought the curve back to give me the kind of density to the picture I want. I've adjusted the sharpening here, and I am now ready to, having done all the creative bits to the picture that I want to export it. So at this stage in Lightroom, different types of software will have different ways of doing the same thing. I go to Library and then I go to Export. Now at this stage it's really important to stress the fact that all of the adjustments I've made so far have not made any difference at all to the original raw image. These are virtual adjustments. Now I'm going to make a copy of that raw with the adjustments applied and export it as a different kind of image that we can continue to work on in Photoshop, and we have the ability to look at using different applications. The great disadvantage of shooting raw, of course, is that you need specialist software to look at the pictures. So now we're going to change it from a raw, but that original raw file will not be affected at all. It will continue to sit there on my hard drive, and I can go back to it at any stage. So Lightroom's now asking me where I want to put that copy image that we're going to make now. So I have created a folder here called, well, Images is a folder on our hard drive which contains all the images that are in the process of the workflow. Now what's important with all this, if I just reduce down here, cancel that, reduce down, is if I go to my computer here and I go to the C drive, there is that folder called Image, and within that are all sorts of different subfolders. The important one, this one, Processed. Now this is where this copy image is going to be put, and it's important to have a structure to your workflow so that as I continue to work on a picture, its physical location can be determined by what folder it's in and at what stage of the workflow it's at. So going back to Lightroom, Export, I'm going to put in Processed. Now that's where I put all my images that have been converted from raw before they've had anything else to do them go into Processed, and I've created a subfolder in that folder called Burma, which obviously for this shoot. Okay, so now moving on down here, it asks me what I want to do. Now I'm going to ask it to rename the image. So it's going to keep its I'm going to give it a custom name, in this case Inla, for Inla Lake. It's good to keep it relatively short, not too long, but I'm keeping the original file number here. So here's an example of how this will be named, Inla 3356. By keeping the original file number, that means should I need to go back and access the raw file, I've got that number which can help me find it. Okay? Well, we can bypass the video because we're not working with video at the moment. So our next thing, and this is very important, this bit, it asks me what I want to do, how I want to make the copy. So let's just look at the format options. I could make a JPEG. We all know about JPEGs, they're the most common way pictures are viewed and used. I could make a Photoshop document, a TIFF, a digital negative, or just keep the original. Well, clearly I need to make a picture now, use a format that I can use other applications such as Photoshop to continue to work on the picture. I could do that with JPEG, but the trouble with JPEGs is you're compressing the image, you're throwing away information, and at this stage of the workflow I want to hold on to as much as possible, so JPEG is not the way to go. Photoshop document or TIFF are both lossless formats, and there's no real advantage to going either way. Both will achieve the same thing. In fact, I'm going to convert it to a TIFF because to look at PSD documents, Photoshop documents, you need, obviously, Photoshop. Whereas TIFFs can be recognized by all sorts of different applications, such as Windows. So I'm going to use TIFF. Okay, the next thing it asks me is the color space that I'm going to convert it to. And here, I need to select one of these are the three options: sRGB, Adobe RGB, or ProPhoto RGB. sRGB is a format, a color space designed essentially for web use. Its gamut, and by gamut I mean the range of colors information that it can actually record, is relatively limited, and as we're determined at this stage to hang on to as much color information as we possibly can, we're going to choose one of these two formats, Adobe 1998 or ProPhoto RGB. Actually, when I come to finish the picture, I choose to use Adobe 98, and I keep everything we have, our printers, everything through the workflow set to use this format. But actually just now I'm going to convert it to ProPhoto RGB because that has a slightly wider gamut than Adobe 98. What does that mean? It means I can hold on to more information, and until I'm completely finished with working on this picture, until I'm happy that I want to make no more adjustments, that's the way to go. So I'm setting ProPhoto RGB. I want no compression, and crucially I want 16 bits per component. What does that mean? Well, that refers to the amount of color information, 16 bits per color channel, the three color channels being red, green and blue. Again, all we need to know is that I'm trying to hang on to as much information as possible, so I choose 16-bit. When we come to finish the picture and convert it again into a format that we can work with and we can email and we can print with, we will have to adjust that. But for now, we're information junkies. We want as much as possible, so 16 bits. Okay, here, image sizing. I don't want to resize this image. I want to hold on to every precious pixel I've got, so I don't check that. If I did, if I were making a small copy, I could of course resize to fit and choose to determine my size there, but I don't want to, because we're creating a master copy of the image. So all I'm going to set is that resolution, 300 pixels per inch. It's generally speaking, that's a bit of an industry standard, not a bad one to go with. But what's crucial is that there's no resizing taking place. Therefore we're hanging on to all those precious pixels. Output sharpening. Well, again, if I was dealing with producing a picture, a low-res picture, say for web use, I may check that to put sharpen for screen there. But as we've already dealt with the sharpening back in the Lightroom menu, I don't tick that. Again, let's come back to the fundamentals. If you're unsure, do nothing. And we've already done the sharpening. Now I come to the metadata, and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, basically, if I had GPS location info embedded in the picture, this is what this relates to, but I don't, so I might bypass that. If I wanted to watermark the picture, this would be where I do it, and as you can see I have various presets there to do that, but I don't. I'm making a master copy at the moment. And here we go, post-processing. After export, do nothing. What are the options? Show in Explorer or open it up. I could choose to open it up immediately in Photoshop, but I won't, because at the moment I'm just making a master TIFF, 16-bit TIFF copy. I'm happy with all that, and the thing is, when I come to do the next picture, all of that is preset. It always pays to actually check that, but all I'd need to do is click on the export and exactly the same thing will be done to the next picture. So I click on export, and when I hear the microwave ping, that image has now been copied into my folder here, and we wait for them to be recognized, and there he is, Inlet 3346, waiting for me to complete the to open him up in Photoshop and carry on the post-production. So that's the exporting of images. Again, simple, but one little box that's checked wrong can really screw things up. So that's that, and what I'm going to do in the next post-production tutorial is then open pictures up in Photoshop and carry on working through the workflow with you so that we get to the end product. Okay, we'll talk to you next month.